Finally, today, Judgment Day in the college admission scandals case involving Lori Loughlin and her husband. Today was sentencing day. They folded their cards. They decided to take the deal. Ted Rowlands has the story.
A year and a half after their arrest in the college admission scandal, it was Judgment Day for actress Lori Loughlin and her husband, designer Massimo Giannulli. The couple pled guilty to paying $500,000 to get daughters Olivia Jade and Isabella into USC. The plan, orchestrated by mastermind turned FBI informant Rick Singer, was to pretend the girls were accomplished rowers. These photos of the girls on rowing machines were part of the government's case. First up to be sentenced was Giannulli, who told the court, "I deeply regret the harm that my actions have caused my daughters and wife and others. I take full responsibility. I'm ready to accept consequences and move forward with the lessons I've learned from this experience." Judge Nathaniel Gorton sentenced Giannulli to 5 months, saying, "You're not stealing bread to feed your family. You have no excuse for your crime, and that makes you all the more blameworthy. That's not how it works in this country, and that's what you're about to find out." Then it was Lori Loughlin's turn. She told the court, "I made an awful decision. In doing so, I ignored my intuition and moral compass, undermined and diminished my daughter's accomplishments. My actions helped exacerbate inequality in the education system, and that weighs heavily. I have great faith in God and believe in redemption and will do whatever I can do to redeem myself and be a catalyst for good. I'm ready to face consequences and make amends." The judge sentenced her to 2 months, saying, "Wonderful husband, beautiful home, resilient kids, more money than needed, a fairy tale life. You stand before me a convicted felon. And for what? You have participated in the corruption of higher education in this country. If we condone such criminal conduct, no matter who commits it, it undermines the fabric of our society. We can only hope that you spend the rest of your charmed life making amends."
My advice is to recognize in the totality of her life, 2 months inside of a minimum security camp is a blip.
Author and prison coach Justin Paperny is a former stockbroker who spent 18 months in federal prison. He says both Loughlin and Giannulli need to keep their heads down and try to use their time behind bars to be productive.
So he has a wonderful opportunity in front of him to make this 5 months or 2 months for Lori a productive time, or it can be a miserable time where their sentence feels like 10 or 15 years. She could be a target, look to get exploited by some of these prisoners who may be jealous of her success, her fame, her wealth, the brevity of her federal prison sentence. So it's in her interest to understand how others will perceive her, to lay low, to understand her environment.
Paperny also discounts the notion that minimum security prisons are country clubs.
The reality is you're confined. You're told with whom you have to share space, what type of job, how many phone minutes a month. You can get sent to the whole or a higher security prison if you get into trouble or associate with the wrong people. So it makes for good headlines, a country club. Though having endured it, I can tell you there are very few similarities between life in federal prison and life in or being a member of a country club.
All right, let's bring in Court TV anchor Ted Rowlands, who was monitoring everything that happened today. Ted, this was actually a virtual appearance, right? She was supposed to appear in person, but because of COVID and the shutdown, it was virtual. What can you tell us about the demeanor of Massimo, the famous designer and guy worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and of course, famed actress Lori Loughlin?
Massimo Giannulli was serious, very calm but reserved, and seemed to really be engaged in the proceedings. He wasn't overly emotional at any time. Seemed genuine when he spoke to the judge, reading a prepared statement. Lori Loughlin, on the other hand, she was a bit distracted for some of the hearing, looking away at certain times. But then when it came time for her to read her statement to the judge, she was very emotional. She broke down 2 separate times, once in the middle and then once at the very end, wiping tears from her face as she finished this prepared statement, talking about how guilty she felt and how bad she felt about her involvement. And it's interesting, the judge treated them, didn't treat them any differently, but he seemed to interact with them a little bit differently. With Lori Loughlin, he seemed to really buy her statement and seemed to almost think, you got the feeling that he didn't think that she was really the ringleader here. She wasn't involved that much. Whereas with Giannulli, he was more businesslike. And he said, hey, this is not how this country works, buddy, and you're going to find out.
Yeah, the irony of all of this is that I don't think either one of those kids really wanted to go to USC, number one. Number two,
right,
their lives would change zero, and $500,000 for a USC diploma, nice school and all, but really, I'm sorry, that's just a dig because I went to a rival school. Go ahead.
Judge actually, the judge said to Lori Loughlin, you're the one that wanted them to go to USC. You're the one that wanted to tell people that they were accepted to USC. And that was the real core. That was a real dig at her, in his opinion. That's exactly what the motivation was.
And that's 1,000% true, which makes, all this behavior beyond ridiculous. And the other ironic part is that at least one of their daughters, if not both, had an incredible business going on social media. I was making like 7 figures herself and didn't need necessarily to go to college. I mean, you can go to college, but it's not like she needed to go to college to get a degree to see if she could get a job. I mean, even though dad's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, doesn't matter. Kids want to make it on their own. But one of them at least was already making it on her own. And this whole thing trashed her business.
Absolutely, yeah. Millions of followers, and now she is known as that girl. Not what she had on her own accomplished. She was, doing makeup and what have you, but she really had the attention of millions of followers, which is, at that age group, it's worth millions for marketers, and that pretty much now wiped out. Yeah, she's back on, but she's not the same person. You look at her now, and it's like, oh, that's the cheating girl. And why? Because of her parents.
Yeah. Because of her parents. They want to go to cocktail parties and talk about their kids at USC, which, again, it's USC. I mean, fine school, but it's USC.
Right.
Let me ask you this, Ted. Exactly what I was going to say. What about the prosecutor? What was the tone of the prosecutor today? How would you describe that?
We've seen this happen with all of these, right? This is not the first person to be sentenced. And there was a real sense of this is justice and people in this capacity can't just get away with things when they want to, because just because you're rich and famous doesn't mean you get what you want. And that was the tone from the prosecutor. All in all, though, I think everybody was happy with this deal. I think the prosecution was happy because, let's face it, this wasn't the strongest case. And I think in the long run, 5 months and 2 months is not a long time for those two to be incarcerated.
All right. Now, Ted, let's take a moment here, put a little perspective on all of this, because this case has been bothering me from the beginning for many different reasons. To me, what this was all about was federal prosecutors who have lots of resources, lots of money, lots of time, trying to make a sexy headline. Let me go after some rich people. And I'll go after these rich people, and I'll have some great headlines, and I could say this is the biggest college admission scandal anywhere, all right? That's what I think motivated them, number one. Because what's the alternative here? Is this really going to clean everything up? Next time, instead of giving $500,000 to Rick Singer, the ringleader of this scam that he was running, they'll give $1 million to the school, and their kids will get in. Does anyone really think this is going to change the outlook for rich kids? They'll just do it a different way. It's not going to change anything, because if this is all about privilege, because that's the arguments I've been hearing. Oh, these people are privileged. They think they can get whatever they want. Whereas if you donate $1 million to the school, guess what? They look at your application a little differently. Just like Harvard in their lawsuit got caught with the dean's little preferred list of, famous people's kids that would get in because their parents were famous people. Harvard actually does that. It was found out in their lawsuit when they were sued. It's unbelievable. So do people really think at the end of the day, now the college admissions process is going to be fair?
I do. On some level, I think that the next person who says, hey, if we pay X amount of dollars, we can get Junior into college, they're going to remember, maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe Junior better get on in his own way or go to the community college for a couple years before he gets to USC or whatever college they're after. I get your argument. And that they found El Chapo and they had him turn to an informant to bring in all of the low-level drug dealers. I get that argument, but I think they fell into Singer. They didn't know what they had, and then what do? They saw an opportunity to send a very clear message that you just can't do whatever you want because you're rich and famous. And I think a lot of people believe it. It will be effective, at least for a short period of time.
Well, but here's the other part of it, Ted. The universities. That's the real problem here, because the universities angry that they weren't getting the money, number one. But do you think that they're going to stop soliciting money from alumni? And do you think the alumni kids will have a worse, as even chance with everyone else? Or do you think you're going to have a better chance? Does anyone honestly think that if you donate millions of dollars to a school, that your child is not going to have the upper hand? And I don't care what school it is. They can say they're blind, but they're lying. I mean, these are all private institutions that can do all of that. There's nothing illegal about it, right? But it's the reality of the way these private institutions run their show. And that's the biggest problem I have with all of this, is that the feds are interfering with a private. Why should this private institution get the protection of the federal government's resources to investigate and prosecute crimes, right? This is a private institution. This wasn't a public college, a public university. These are all private schools, and they operate in their own little way that they operate. And they let kids in because your dad's a senator, or your mother is the governor, or you know what? Oh yeah, your dad's on the board and he donated $500,000. Your mom's the president of that tech company, so you're getting in. I mean, that's the real world. And to me, this is just so shallow and gets nowhere near the actual thing that got people angry, which is rich people having an advantage to get in, because they still do, and they will. And it's not because of the rich people, it's because of the private universities and the way they operate. I mean,
yeah, but
did I say anything that's inaccurate there?
No, but you got to be happy for the little guy on this one. Maybe it won't make a difference, but this was a statement. And for some people, a lot of people, they thought, finally, somebody who thinks they can have everything got busted. And that is part of the equation here. Yeah.
So it's vengeance. Let's go after the rich people. Okay, all right, I get it. People say, let's go after the rich people. I get it. The rich people, they don't get everything they want. They're getting in trouble this time. You're not getting away with it. Let me ask you this, though. Okay.
Well, are you saying that they did not
Court
break
TV
the
is
law?
all about the law.
Right. Are you saying that they did not break a
criminal law
at all?
Criminal law?
Well,
did you know that there's not such thing? There's no such thing as federal bribery of a private company. It doesn't exist. They use the theft of services, the wire fraud statutes, which are so overly broad that they just sit back and figure out, all right, what can we get them on? Instead of saying they violated this, it's what can we get them on? That's the way the feds operate. But let me ask you this, okay? Let me ask you this, because we're talking about cheating to get into school, right? Do you think that if, let's say, some scholarship athlete, right, didn't quite have the best test scores to get into a school, so someone took the test for them, right, and then they got caught, do you think they would prosecute that student for getting someone or whoever hired that person to take the test? Do you think they would bring criminal charges against that person because it's the same exact thing? Do you think they would?
I don't, but it doesn't mean I don't think they should.
Selective prosecution, then. It's selective prosecution. They selected to go after sexy people that we can prosecute. That's not the way the system should work. It should be you should apply the law to everyone equally. Rich, poor, famous, infamous, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter, but it does to the feds because they like the press conference, they like that I'm talking about it, and they like to name these operations. Operation Varsity Blues. That's what they do.
That was a good one.
That's what they do.
I know.
I
agree.
It was a good one. It's reprehensible conduct.
I love it. I think it's great that they did finally do something. The alternative is like, oh, well, just let's forget it. Let's forget it, because what does it matter? No, it does send a message, and it makes people think twice at least in the short term. I think it will be effective for the next person that wants to do something illegal to get their kid into college or inappropriate.
All right. Next time I want the feds going after the private institutions. Why don't we go after them to really create an equitable system? Because this was just like a showtime. This is showtime. I don't think it'll have any effect, but maybe it will. Someone gets deterred. Aunt Becky will go away for a couple months. And how much time, effort, and manpower went into this while we have, lots of other problems, lots of other crimes that go unsolved. But that's the way the feds work. Not a big fan of the feds.
Understood. Apparently, especially not tonight.
I was a state prosecutor. Crime happens. The investigators go out, try to figure out who did it. Then we bring them into court and prosecute them. Federal prosecutors sit back and say, what can we get them on? What can we get them on? Instead of, something happened, let's figure it out and let's prosecute them. It's what can we get them on? And I'm not saying these people are innocent. It was reprehensible what they did. And all right, maybe, you know what, Ted? I'm going to hope that you're right, that there's some deterrence here. Ted Rollins, what a job. I spoke too much. I'm sorry.
No, it was great. Thank you, Vinny. Have a great weekend.